We're here to talk about Murdered Soul Suspect, and you're watching Connected Digital World.
Grow up on the streets. You start thinking you're invincible. Nothing can touch you. You never really lose. Go to arrest some freak, find out you aren't as invincible as you thought.
So, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
Do you want to tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. So, my name is Eric Studer, and I am the senior design producer over at Airtight Games. So what that means is I head up the design team, and I make sure that they've got clear tasks, they've got clear milestones, and that they're delivering on those milestones. Additionally, I work with the creative director to make sure that the game that he wants to make is implemented, and we create exactly the world that he's trying to build.
Okay. So the game in question we're talking about today is Murdered Soul Suspect.
Yeah, that's the one.
So you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Sure, absolutely. So Murdered is an interesting murder mystery game where we kill the protagonist in the first 5 minutes of the game. Now that he's dead, he's trapped in this purgatory realm called the Dusk. And he needs to bring his killer to justice. That's the only way to complete his unfinished business and move on from this realm. Okay.
So, did you guys set out to make it a murder mystery game, or was it going to be something different that turned out to be mystery?
There, as with any new sort of IP, you do a lot of experimentation, and there was a pre-production period where we experimented with different concepts. What we found, though, is that the game really started to gel when we slowed it down a little bit, where we focused more on the story, when we focused more on being a ghost and what it means to be a ghost. Those are the physics and psychology of being a ghost. And so as a result, for the last 2 years, we've really gone in this direction, and the game is what it is now because we took that time to do the pre-production work.
Okay. So our lead character, Ronan, he's a policeman who's got a bit of a checkered past. Do you want to tell us a little bit about him without giving too much of the game away?
Well, Ronan started life as a criminal. He grew up as a criminal. His parents were criminals. He's always been on the wrong side of the law. When he met Julia, though, the woman who'd become his wife, he knew that he wouldn't be able to stay with her if he continued on this line. And so he made a huge life change. He gave up his sort of original life and turned a new leaf. Julie's brother, Rex, worked with her to get Ronan onto the Salem PD. So he became a detective on the police force. And this opportunity allowed him to build a new life with Julia. What this does is it creates a sort of a duality with the character. He's lived on both sides, as a criminal and on the side of the law. He takes that perspective with him as he investigates crime scenes. It also has influenced every aspect of his life as well.
What did you guys use as inspiration for the story and also for obviously the ghostly parts? Absolutely.
I mean, there's all sorts of different inspiration sources. As with any sort of entertainment, you start doing research. You look at what's come before, you look at what their successes are, what their challenges are, and how you create your own unique world. So you're not just falling into the same pattern as everything else. I think it all started with the fact that Chiyakawa-san wanted to make a ghost game. He wanted to make a game that featured a ghost character. While he was mulling this around, he was watching the movie Die Hard. And he started thinking about the character of John McClane. Not necessarily the situation that he was in, but more who he was. His tenacity as a detective, as an investigator. And because he was already in this mindset of ghost stories, he thought, well, what would happen if McClane had actually died in Nakatomi Plaza? And was trapped as a ghost in this space. Well, because he's such a strong-willed character, because he is who he is, he wouldn't just give up. He would find a way to continue to pursue the bad guys and hopefully bring them to justice. And I think that was the kernel that eventually became what Murdered is. From the standpoint of being a ghost in the ghost world itself, I think the movie Ghost is actually a pretty good example. I mean, we reference that a fair amount, if only because they do such a good job of building the rules of the world. What can a ghost do? What can a ghost not do? But also knowing when to cheat a little bit. Knowing when cheating and breaking the rules or bending the rules is good for the story, right? Additionally, from a game standpoint, we looked at things like LA Noire, Heavy Rain, games that are heavily influenced by not only their characters, but the mysteries you're trying to solve there. I think those are probably some of the core inspirations that we had.
Okay, so Ronan's got to actually obviously solve his own murder, but there are also supernatural elements going on in the story as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that you've got one of the core aspects of the game, in addition to the investigations, is the notion of living out that fantasy of being a ghost. One of the ways that we support this is the fact that aside from exterior walls, which are not passed through because of a consecration that has occurred at the foundation of a lot of buildings, something that was put there because citizens of Salem are so supernatural in our world, they believe that they need to prevent or limit the movement of spirits. This does work. I mean, they have no way of proving it, but it does work. It actually prevents spirits from freely moving in and out of buildings. But once you're in a space, you're not bound by physical walls anymore. You can walk through anywhere, you can walk through anything, you can see places that you wouldn't be able to see otherwise, you can go places you wouldn't be able to get to otherwise. Additionally, as a ghost, you can possess living beings. You can do things like, look through their eyes, or you can influence their thoughts and control what they're thinking, or direct their motion a little bit. And all of that works towards this sense of discovery from the standpoint of being a ghost.
So you mentioned possession there. You can also possess animals.
You found the cat in the town. Yes, you can possess cats. So the rules are basically, for us, at least in our game, is any living thing you can possess, right? The lower functioning it is, the more control you have over it. So humans are extremely high functioning, which is why you can only possess and look through their eyes or hear conversations you wouldn't be able to hear, and only obliquely control their actions. But a cat, being a much simpler life form, Ronan actually can get full control over the cat, and you will see that animal several times over the course of the game.
Okay. There's a number of options within the game where you're questioning characters,
yes,
or dealing with things like that. Do you have to go through all the questions, and also will there be a change in the story depending on what questions you ask?
So Shiokawa-san came into the game with a very clear notion of the story he wants to tell. So as a result, we decided we just made the design decision that we were going to support that one story. And so there is a conclusion that we want you to draw from each of the cases. There is a conclusion that we want you to draw from these interrogations, and there is an overall conclusion to the end of the game. We use the investigations to support this really rich narrative that we've created, and the characters that are living out the story, the beats of the story.
Okay. There's also a lot of side quests in the game. Do you want to talk a little bit about those?
Absolutely. So, going back to the point of the story, right? You can't create a good story without a really rich world. And the way you create a rich world is by establishing a lore about what came before it. The thing about it, though, is that all of those elements don't necessarily make sense for the story. And you don't talk about them within the context of the critical path. The way we utilize all this stuff that we've created for it is we have side quests, we have collectibles, we have interactions with ghosts that if you take the time to pursue, you're going to expand the world. You're going to know a lot more about Salem, and you're going to know a lot more about the people who live there.
And what format is the game coming out?
So we're coming out on Xbox 360, PS3, Xbox One, PS4, and PC.
Are there any significant differences between the current gen and next gen versions?
We decided we wanted to make sure that we didn't dilute the overall experience by at this late in the stage trying to support a bunch of the platform specific stuff. However, we did take the opportunity to bump up the technical fidelity of the game. So the shadow maps are a little bit denser, the texture resolution is a little bit higher. We've got subsurface scattering on the NPCs now. So the game will look a little bit better, but the core experience will be shared across the platforms.
Great. The police badges
yes.
really look like skulls. Is that deliberate, or is that just the resolution on the monitors downstairs?
I don't know. Who knows? Our character teams are quite talented. They may have intentionally worked that in there. I don't know off the top of my head if that's the case.
And are the tattoos of any real importance?
They are, but I don't know enough about the philosophy behind it. It all came from our character guys and our creative lead, Matt Brunner, who's part of the owner of the studio. But yes, there was a lot of thought put into exactly what those tattoos would be.
Okay, thank you. And what's the current release date for the game?
We're looking at June right now for the release date.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
for your time.
absolutely, absolutely.
still hate heights.